Good morning, everyone. Happy Wednesday to you. And thank you again so much for coming and joining me in the conversation about transforming mental health through social work and what our role as social workers are in the transformation of mental health. We have been talking every week about who we are as social workers, about what it means for us. In our first conversation that we had here, it was about any sort of reservations, even that I was having on taking on this something that seems like a massive project around, or a massive calling around, the transformation of mental health. And then last week, we had an opportunity to just reflect on the first session we had of the Social Work Power Certificate course, where people began to identify with what power meant for them in the context of who they are as social workers, and then also in the context of what it means to then be responsible for the transformation of mental health. And this week, as we continue to have conversations about what it means to be a part of, or to be the leaders in the role of transforming mental health, part of it becomes also a conversation about what our values are as social workers. Why is this an important conversation for us to be having? And so it's really just about posing a whole series of questions that allow us to really take a look at, why did we become social workers? Why do we, in the circumstances that we find ourselves in the world of work, where there is a disconnect often between what it is our clients need and what it is that the system actually provides, are we complicit in that role? Are we complicit in that experience? Or are we, the change agents that we call ourselves, as being one of the terms that we tend to use about who it is we are? What does it mean to be a change agent? And really being able to take a look at, how am I participating in the transformation of mental health in my everyday? How am I doing it perhaps on a more systematic level? Or how am I not fully participating in that? And then what is it that I want to do about that? So it ends up, again, going back to what our values are as social workers, what brings us into the field, what brought us into the field to begin with. And it may have been, some of my experience of what brought me into the field was sort of by default. It wasn't like I was in high school and I said, oh, I want to be a social worker when I grew up. It wasn't really part of the communications about what you could be when I was in high school. And it wasn't until well into college, when I started thinking about what I was going to do next, that I had a mentor who was my English literature professor, and we were talking about what my options were, and she suggested whether or not I had ever considered social work. And I hadn't thought about it. I was a peer educator for multiple different topics and issues. I worked on a suicide hotline. I was participating in all this stuff, which falls under social work, I guess, but I never had considered what social work was, even though I was, in the advocacy groups I was a part of. They were peer advocacy groups, peer educators. I did it because it was what spoke to me. I did it because it was what drove who it is that I believed myself to be as an advocate. And then through this conversation with my English professor, I found the vehicle for me to be able to do the advocacy work that I was called to do. And that's how I came to social work. So I think that, and my values around social justice and around equality of services and ensuring that people get to choose what it is that works best for them and not be in more of a paternalistic and professional centric kind of process where we're doing to people instead of with people, is part of the reasons why the transformation of mental health is something that is important for me. You know, it speaks to all of those areas for me. So let's hear from you. What is it for you? What brought you into this field to begin with? What were your values that add to why it is it's important to take a role in the transformation of mental health, and how do those values help inform the next step that you choose to take? So click below, join us also on Friday as we talk about discovering our power as social workers in the Social Work Power Certificate course on Friday at 3:30 Eastern time. Please join us there and click below, enter a comment, let us know what your thoughts are on today. All right, have a wonderful, wonderful rest of your day.